I'm always really interested in all the things that affect Toronto real estate. So not only just mortgage brokers and interest rates and, what the latest stats were, but also I think in a bigger picture as a real estate agent, you need to understand the overall economics of the country, you know, as well as at the very least your city level. And there has been a lot going on in the city of Toronto. And if you are like me, who is politically inclined, I guess is the best way to put it, you will know who Daniel Tate is. He is executive director of IntegrityTO. I'm honored that you would find time to be on my podcast. Thank you. I'm a huge fan. What really struck me about Daniel, and I'm going to let him, I don't want to take his fire away, but what really struck me about Daniel was I find that a lot of these groups get kind of shut down by certain other groups by their background or, whether they have, I don't know, they're able to kind of show receipts for what they're doing. And in looking into Daniel's background, it's incredibly impressive, from a master's in project management to a BA in political science. You are not some fringe guy off
honors the BA.
Honors BA. Sir. By the way, my daughter has an honors BA, and I always say it, and she's like, "Mom, it's a BA," and I'm like,
"I did that extra
the
year.
honors part. I don't have an honors BA," so I love that. So. I really want to point that out because, again, I find that there's a lot of gaslighting in the world in general on both sides. And I really was drawn to, your organization and what you have to say because it's based on facts. It's not derogatory in any sense. It's just like, hey, this is what I've uncovered. This is what's going on. And what do you think? So welcome to Leverage. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I really want to get into a whole bunch of stuff and I want to hear your side, but in looking into IntegrityTO a little bit more, I understand that the organization came to you after the city council decided that they were going to rename Dundas Square. I'm still ready to jump out a window on that one. So, you put together a petition, you got 35,000, am I getting that right? 35,000 signatures. And the likes of Gord and all the other, guys who decided to throw their hat into it on city council voted for it and pushed it through. And so you just felt like no one's listening. So let's hear it from you. I want to hear what happened, what sparked it. I mean, there's so many things that could spark someone to get involved, but the Dundas Square of all things.
Yeah, I think we were still coming out of our year-long COVID slumber, sort of getting back to normal when all the lockdowns were ending, and thinking that we're going to get back to normal life. And it was like that for a period of time until one morning I woke up and I saw the headline on my phone that the city of Toronto has decided to rename Dundas Square to Sankofa Square. And I initially thought that this was maybe like a Babylon Bee article. Yes. Like I thought it was parody because it made absolute no sense. A, we didn't know why they were renaming it. B, we didn't know why they were using a name that didn't resonate or have any historical or cultural resonance with Toronto at all. And the more I began to learn about that issue, the more I realized that this was basically imposed on us by a very small group of activists within City Hall. And the mayor and her number one supporter, Chris Moyse, were basically the two chief proponents of this change. A change that would have an impact to taxpayers, a change that nobody asked for, especially when we were seeing other elements of public disorder that were happening and decline of infrastructure and all sorts of issues in our city that needed to be prioritized, not a virtue signaling renaming of a square. So that's really how it all started. That really perked my ears and made me realize that this is worth fighting for, because I actually wrote my university undergrad thesis on Dundas Square, so I was really well versed in how that square came to be and the different forces that were involved in basically wrecking private property on the southeast corner to pave way for this new civic square. So I had written about it, and I knew about the square very in depth. I had also been to many concerts at the square over the last 20 odd years. So it really bothered me. It bothered me to the point where me and a good friend of mine decided we had to take action. And that action was, let's put together a petition, and the rest is history.
Listen, I will say, whether people who are listening to this, agree or disagree with your perception of the city, one of the things that I've very strongly about, whether it's like talking to my adult children or talking to friends, is I think we're in a world where, like, stop complaining and do something, or stop complaining altogether. I think there's a lot of people who, like keyboard warriors, who want to go on to Twitter, or they want to go on social media and they want to say all this stuff and they're really upset about it. And I have a lot of respect for people like yourself. I mentioned Matthew To before, like people who are like, I'm not okay with what I'm seeing, and I'm actually going to take action. So I really have a lot of respect for that. So thank you. So unnamed mayor that we have in council right now is a very controversial one. I've seen, whether it's my algorithm or not, getting lots of feeds about, her popularity. We are less than a year away from an election. Speaking about this Dundas Square, where do you see the city of Toronto decline? And this is the whole idea about this whole episode, was, has the city of Toronto declined under the leadership of our current mayor? And I wouldn't put COVID at her feet. I mean, listen, I wasn't really excited by John Tory handing out tents at one time and filling up, Trinity Bellwoods. But COVID is over now, and the mayor is in charge. So what is your perception as someone who has gotten involved, who's uncovered all sorts of things? What can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think she's a failed mayor. I think that she's done a poor job as the moral leader, the cheerleader of our city, like the person who's supposed to have that moral leadership, moral clarity, strength. She lacks those attributes, in my opinion. Now, granted, she might not be responsible for all the problems we have, but they have certainly gotten worse. And that decline has accelerated under her watch. She hasn't really done anything, in my view, to stem the tide of what's going on. And it's evident, because when you go to City Hall, when you go to meetings, you can see that she's very into ideology. She's very into identity politics, things that have nothing to do with having a well-run, functional city. The deal that we're supposed to have as taxpayers is that we pay taxes and user fees, and in return, we get a well-run city. We get roads that work and aren't broken. We get an efficient, innovative transit system. We get, library services, etc. What we're finding is we're not really getting that, or we're getting a really poor version of those things, a low quality version of those things, while our taxes continue to go up and up at record levels. So everybody is just reconciling this disconnect, whereas you're paying more, you're getting less, and you're observing a worsening state of your city. So it doesn't, it's not adding up. And that tells me that a lot of the money that we're paying to taxes is not being utilized correctly. And a lot of it is probably being siphoned for purposes that taxpayers don't want. Ideological agendas, mini bureaucracies that are very focused on things like race and gender and all those kinds of things. Like, a substantial amount of money goes towards those things, and that doesn't help our city. It creates more division, and again, it also, I think, creates a lack of morale within city staff, because if they don't have faith in the leadership, then they're not going to have faith in their own work, and they're not going to have pride in their own work. So, and I've seen this in the private sector. I've worked at companies where the senior leadership team or the executive team didn't have the respect of the workers and showed in their work. So I think these concepts are applicable right now at City Hall, all under the watch of the mayor.
So I have excuse my language, but I have a saying that says like ship floats downstream, right? So like it all comes from the top. I've seen it in corporate myself for sure. And I would say that's kind of where there was a lot to unpack there. So one of the things that I would say is let's go to the moral clarity. So I think there's a lot of things that are going on, whether it's from like massive demonstrations in the streets to, massive drug use in the downtown core. But, I think some of the things that homeowners and people that live in Toronto would care about also are, as we saw winter show up early this year, is we couldn't even get our sidewalks plowed last year. Like we could, but yet I'm going to have them come after me, but the bike lanes were prioritized. We live in we live in a city where we've got snow on the ground 6 months of the year, and we've got massive congestion on major streets because we've got these bike lanes. Bike lanes are important. I'm a runner. I love being outside, but there is an element of like a time and place. I understand that libraries are being opened specifically to as makeshift homeless shelters. So, when you think about all the things that people pay for in their taxes, these are the basic. Like I grew up in Toronto. We had our streets were plowed. We had libraries where you took your kids. I took my kids to the neighborhood library, when they were really small during the winter. I wanted to be able to, go downtown to a park with my kids and have it be safe. And we now have, the distance of what's going on in Dufferin Grove. Like I literally did a showing downtown for a client a month ago and watched a grown man take a defecate by the tree only steps away from a children's playground. And Dufferin Grove Park was one of the most beautiful parks in the city. So the concern for people who want to live in a neighborhood that's safe, it doesn't sound like the mayor is delivering on that. And there needs to be change. Let me ask you a question. So the federal government just set out their budget. And so we saw a line by line item, and I can go through each one of them that I disagreed with, including $150 million that went to the CBC, but I digress. Where is the accountability for the city, council, to give a line by line budget to the people of Toronto? Does that happen? Have I missed it?
Well, the budget process is a multi-month process, and they do consultations. To what degree those consultations actually inform the actual budget is probably negligible. I think a lot of it is just a bit of a dog and pony show, because when you have people like the mayor and her allies in council, they have their agenda. They have their sort of worldview of what should receive the lion's share of funding, and they're going to push that through, regardless of what the public may feel. And then the other councillors, well, they'll be there and they'll scrutinize the budget, they'll deliberate it, but ultimately the mayor will get her way because she has the votes in city council. And so that's why we have these massively bloated budgets that are spending on areas that likely the majority don't agree with. But we're not in a position to have a referendum on our spending. And really the only way that I see that we can really affect change from a budget perspective is we need a crop of new leaders who are going to be good financial stewards of our money. I am of the opinion that the current crop of leaders, especially under the mayor and a lot of her sort of progressive allies, believe that property owners and taxpayers more of their money should be extracted and distributed to others who perhaps haven't earned it or don't work.
Right.
There is a great wealth redistribution through the tax apparatus. Everybody sees it. Everybody feels it. And is that appropriate? I don't think so, because I think property owners and taxpayers are a key, they're key to a robust economy.
Listen, she's getting rid of the middle class. That's the bottom line. I have a very good friend who follows you, who I've been running with for 15 years, very much worked in the media business her whole career. And that, she's on the other side, potentially like retiring, let's say in the next 5 years. And she says, like, there's no middle class left in Toronto. She's like, I could not afford to buy my house today. Most of the people that own homes could not afford to buy their house today. And so if they keep coming back, what I think people forget is, from my experience with very wealthy clients, they have a lot of choices. So if Toronto is no longer an attractive place to live, they just won't live here. They will stop.
Well, it's also not an attractive place to do business because of the tax rates. The tax rates are so incredibly high. Why would any entrepreneur who is going to create jobs and create wealth for the community, why would they set up shop here if they're going to be, taxed to death when they can go elsewhere where it's more reasonable? So there is, I feel, a great cash grab that's happening at the municipal level. And maybe that would be acceptable if we had an amazing, well-run, high-service delivery city. We can at least say we're getting value for the high price.
Right.
We're not getting the value.
No, we're not. I would agree with you. Again, going back to the sidewalks. I mean, so let's talk about, so I actually just want to ask you something before I move to the next point. You said that she has support, most of the people who are on city council support her progressive views. And let's remember, unlike the recent New York election, where in the US, mayoral candidates actually are part of an actual party, right? So mayoral candidates in Toronto are nonpartisan. They don't stand with any party, but you can assume, like if we had to push,
maybe not formally, but if you look at the
not
backgrounds,
formally,
they're party
right?
aligned.
So they're not,
yeah.
But we have an NDP mayor. If we had to stick labels on it, right? So, is your thought that this is really what's made, like, is that what people are voting for within their individual constituents is more NDP? And is that why we have a mayor? I mean, listen, if you looked at the heat map, sorry, I'm going all over the place, but it makes me crazy, like how she got in. So if you look at the heat map of who voted for her, it was primarily south of Bloor. Like literally everybody south of Bloor almost voted for her. And then everyone north of it, people threw their hats behind Anna at the last minute. And Brad was pretty much an unknown at that time. But, how do we think that's going to change? And even if we got someone new in that was fresh blood and had a better perspective of running the city and actual skill in running the city, how is that going to come up against a entire council or a majority of a council that's still very progressive?
Well, I think all people, whether you live north of Bloor or south of Bloor, need to really evaluate their quality of life over the last 4 years. And even though they may be card-carrying NDPers, or maybe not, maybe they just generally shift left in their worldview or their political views, they still need to ask themselves some tough questions. Has my life improved under this mayor? Is life more affordable under this mayor? Is the streetcar or the bus more reliable, or the subway more reliable and safe under this mayor?
Right.
Ask those questions and forget about whether you identify as an NDP or this party or that. Forget all that. Put all that stuff to the side, the left-wing, right-wing nonsense, put it to the side. Evaluate your life. The quality of your life, the cost of living, the quality of your parks, your ability to get from A to B, the safety you feel when you're walking the streets at any time of the day. And if all those metrics have declined, which I think they have because I live south of Bloor, then you need new leadership, regardless of if you traditionally vote NDP or otherwise.
Very fair. Very, very fair. And I really appreciate you reframing that narrative. I agree. I tend to go there just because I get pulled into that trap. But, what do you say to those people who will push back and say, well, it's not CHOW'S fault. I mean, we have the TTC falls under the provincial government. right? It's not her fault that the LRT hasn't opened up after 15 years on Eglinton, like things like that. Where I think that that's where some of the muddied water comes in, where people are like, oh, she seems really nice. And like I mean, really, that's what people sometimes say out loud. But then they go, those fall under the provincial, like, is that really her fault?
Well, the Eglinton LRT, she'll get a pass on that because that certainly is a provincial screw up. But at the end of the day, no, she doesn't get a free pass on anything else. She's the mayor. She is the one who's in charge of key appointments of important committees and bodies, like the TTC chair, for example.
Oh, interesting.
And so when the TTC is failing, it's on her. It's on her. She appoints the TTC chair. The mayor sets the precedent, sets the culture for the whole city by virtue of what she says, by the virtue of her policy making, how she influences council, her committee appointments, everything. She really sets the table for the whole city. So when the mayor's failing, it's going to be a cascading domino effect. And so anybody who's trying to defend her, it's a cop-out. She is the CEO of the city of Toronto. So when the city of Toronto fails, then you have to go to the top. And she's accountable. She is the chief executive of the city. And if the city's not going well, you can blame this person and that person. But ultimately, she's the one who sets the frame, sets everything. And so that's why I think we need a new mayor, frankly.
You know what? I really love that perspective as well, because I think that there's a lot of deflection on, well, this doesn't fall in this, again, there's a lot of blame. Is it federal? Is it provincial? Is it, and she may not have control over certain things, but it's a great way of saying, like, she was elected to run our city. So
yeah, we need more private sector. We need more private sector like accountability in the public sector. If a CEO doesn't deliver on the metrics, not just profitability metrics, but human resources, job performance, happiness, all the other various metrics that a high functioning company would adhere to.
For sure, absolutely.
And CEOs and other VPs have lost their jobs because the organization under them didn't perform.
Can you imagine if that was the way the government worked, how incredible it would be that and the accountability that would happen if you actually had a metric in which people could be let go? Anyway,
that's the North Star we're going for.
I love it. It's a dream. Tell me how I can get involved. So let's talk about safety, because I have some connections within no, I don't have connections. That sounded really way more impressive than it is. So I have a friend who is, let's just say, involved with the Toronto Police and knows the police chief and has intimate meetings with them, as well as a very good friend's father who's an ex-cop. And I really struggle to understand, because there's a lot in the news that kind of shows them as this kind of, they're standing by, they're just keeping the peace, but they're not actually, like, I'll use the protests that happened during the Gaza war, and there are laws in place. I've had conversations with Warren Kinsella about this, and that we have laws in place in Canada to enforce these things not to happen. You cannot protest with a mask on. You cannot have terrorist flags. Just using these as an example. Let's not even forget the crime and the fact that people are stealing cars off of your driveway, or breaking into homes, or dragging mothers through. There was a horrible home invasion last week, but it almost feels like their hands are tied, like they don't want to touch it. There's too much risk, and do you feel like this is because the mayor is not standing with them? There's not supporting them, not saying go out and do your job, because from what I've heard, in someone from city council, like, she says the quiet parts out loud. Like, when she's asked to shut these down, she says, that's not what my constituents want. That there is, in fact, no interest to actually clean up what's going on in Toronto.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen any indication from her that she does want to clean things up. every time these issues happen or there's hate marches downtown that leave a trail of destruction. By the way, I've seen the aftermath of these marches, and we're talking vandalism, we're talking a lot of hateful stickers plastered all over the city. It just makes the whole streetscape look really negative. And
not to mention how much it costs for us cops to be out there. Like, how much does it cost the taxpayers for those cops to just
last year it was 20 million just to sort of chaperone these marches, which is very concerning. That's a massive amount of money. Why they're allowed to take over critical arteries in the downtown core, blocking
direct
emergency vehicles.
ambulances.
See, if we had a mayor with a strong moral compass, she would speak out. She would basically say everything I just said. We can't allow this. You have a right to protest, but you don't have a right to choke downtown streets and block first responders and leave a trail of vandalism. We're talking, they'll throw red paint here, they'll put hate stickers there, they'll graffiti street furniture like garbage bins and bus shelters. It's really gross stuff, and you don't hear a peep from the mayor. She continues to dance. So everything you're saying is spot on. Where's the police in all this? Well, again, just like any organization, it starts with the top. The leadership sets the context for the rest of the organization. And we also know that the leadership of the Toronto Police, in particular the chief, takes many of his marching orders from the mayor. Because the mayor is the one who controls the purse strings for the police. So I imagine there are backdoor negotiations that involve some degree of trade-off or compromise, and the police are asked to stand down on particular things. I'm sure that occurs, but that also doesn't paint the police in a good light either. And I imagine there's probably also morale issues within the rank and file of the Toronto Police, because I'm sure a lot of them signed up to actually enforce the law. That's why they went to police college. They want to enforce the law. And if they're being hamstrung from doing that, then that also sends a bad message that will sort of domino throughout the rank and file of the police force.
And the quality, I would imagine. Who's going to show? Who wants to go to police college if you're... Yeah, it'll be very...
You're just going to stand around chaperoning hate marches or but the other problem is, if you're a police officer and you want to get the bad guys off the street, but then every time you arrest a bad guy, he'll be released within 24 hours, no matter how egregious the crime is, then you start losing your motivation.
Well, why would you do all the paperwork?
Right, so that's where you start getting into other levels of government, like the Attorney General and the province, which is like, why do we not... We have the wherewithal to build a $1 billion courthouse right near University in Dundas, but we don't have the resources to build a similar facility to hold criminals and keep them off the streets and pending trial. So that's also, demoralizing to a lot of police officers.
Right. I mean, we have $20 million to have babysitters on the streets for these hate marches or whatever the marches are. But we don't have enough money in city council to pay for our own bills. So we have to go back to the taxpayers. I mean, again, it goes back to that whole take the bees out of the ecosystem. It's not just the bees, right? Back to the police force, I would say this ex-cop, I had the conversation, lovely man. And he goes, listen, the other part is also being canceled. Everyone has a phone now. And if that's the environment that the mayor is allowing to happen, does that police officer, go on leave? Do they lose their pension? They're terrified. Like, they're actually terrified to do anything. It's not worth it anymore. So now we have a police force that doesn't think it's worth anything to enforce the lawlessness of our city. It's really crazy. So let's take a positive note. We have a election as per your website. Less than a year away. I love the countdown. I am counting down internally. I'm not going to get into the candidates, but let's say we get a new candidate in, we get her out, whoever that is. How much change do you think that person can make within those 4 years?
Well, it also depends on the makeup of city council. It's not just the mayor that needs to change. Several councilors need to change, and if you can change the makeup to having a more rational, common sense council, then you can get a lot done. You can get a lot done. You can really start looking at where the financial waste and corruption exists within City Hall and start cleaning that up. You can start eliminating redundant job positions that aren't providing residents with any value. You could take a fresh look at every division, audit every division, and not just a financial audit, a cultural audit, and a philosophy audit. How do they operate? How do they do team building? What's the quality of their work? How many 311 requests does a particular division have vis-a-vis another division? And look for those problem points within the city administration, and then start from there. And then start, working on improving service quality, service level, service response time.
How about having someone answer a phone when you call 911?
Right.
mean, that's
Absolutely.
just, to me, that's the scariest, just the stories I hear.
That's probably the most indicative sign of a failing city is being put on hold when you call 911.
Forget the non-emergency line that I've had to call for 32 Division because there's adults smoking bongs in my park.
And remember,
who will not leave.
they might be championing supposed lower crime stats, which they are. But remember, when 911 wait times are high, people report less. So remember, that's reported stats. But if you have such little faith in the police or in emergency services' ability to respond to your urgent issue, you might not even bother picking up the phone.
We have a private community organization that is on speed dial on my phone, and I would call them, and I would never call 911.
Yeah, private security is now becoming a thing, and it's like gated communities are becoming a thing. Fences everywhere to create buffer zones are becoming a thing. It's like we're slowly turning into South Africa. We don't want this. This is a bad trend. We need to fix it.
Very, very bad trend. And I've even heard that the criminals have gotten smart because they know when the private securities go home in the morning at 7:30, so they are now they're now breaking in between 7:30 and 8:30. It's crazy.
And who are these criminals? Are they Canadian citizens? Remember, Toronto's a sanctuary city, which is basically like sending a clarion call to every criminal in North America. Come to Toronto. Come. We're not going to ask you for paperwork. You're going to get free services paid for by others, you and I. And if you have criminal intent, go nuts. So it's a confluence of factors that are making Toronto more and more unlivable per day, and these are the problems that a new mayor and new leadership need to tackle.
So on that note, to put you on the spot, if you're willing to say of the people that have potentially thrown their hat in the ring, I know Chow has basically come out and say she's going to run again. I heard she made an announcement this morning that, us lucky taxpayers she's not going to do a tax increase next year. Everything's going to be fine.
Well, everything's political for her. She knows that would be political suicide if she tried to do another egregious tax increase. So I kind of saw that coming, but that doesn't absolve her of her sins from the last three years.
I actually think that announcement is just a weakness. It just shows me that she sees that there's inroads happening around her and that she's losing support. That, to me, that's it. John Tory is not come out and said that he's coming back. Have you heard anything different?
I haven't. I don't know what he is planning to do or not do.
I hope he doesn't.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. And Mr. Bradford?
Well, yeah, so as of now, it seems like it's only him. He's the only one who's formally thrown his hat into the ring. And I like Brad. And I think he's a good voice. He's a good voice at council. I've watched him in many council debates. And yeah, I like Brad. Obviously, if it was a Brad versus Chow battle, then Brad gets my vote for sure.
For sure. Gosh, that's a no-brainer. I agree with you, and I love that. And I think that what I said the last time I had him on my podcast, which was months ago, is all those people that are going to throw their hat in the ring in 6 months. Shame on you. He's been like, whether you love him, where you think he's the best guy for it, he's been out there fighting and speaking out about all the things that were wrong in this city. I mean, she pulled him out of his post, because he was challenging her so much. And I have to respect that. Whether he wins or not, time will tell. But
yeah, we'll see. Hopefully he runs a very inspired campaign that resonates with people.
I hope so.
And may the best person win. That's really all you can hope for, is really the most qualified person with merit wins the race, who can get the city back on track. It's not going to be Chow. We know that. Maybe it's Brad. Maybe it's somebody else. It's really too early to tell, but I'm going to remain optimistic.
I think I'll stay there with you. And on that note, I really appreciate your time, Daniel. It was, I feel like I could talk to you about the city and politics all day. We definitely align on not just a few points, but everything. And thank you for all that you're doing. I mean, like I said, there are a lot of people that complain. I know a lot of people who, say tons of stuff that align with what you're saying, but they're not.
Action. We need action.
We all need action. That's what we're lacking. We all need action. I will have your website in the show notes. If anybody does want to get involved, I don't know if you take donations or not. Okay, great. If anybody wants to champion what Daniel and his team are doing, I encourage it, because it's some really great stuff. And I thank you from me and everybody else I know who really appreciates your work.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on the show.